Live from the internet, it's the Narrative After Show, bringing you the entire week in review. With Rachel Bitticoffer, Eric Garland, and here's your host, Zeb Chalet.
Welcome everybody. Welcome to the show. It's so good to be with you tonight on a Friday night. It's the after show, the best part of the week, because we get to talk about everything that happened and let it all disappear as we get ready for the weekend. Rachel Bitticoffer is back from Arizona. How are you, Rachel?
I'm good, man. I'm burning with incandescent row rage, so I'm really glad to have happy hour tonight.
The best tweet of the day, best DM I've ever had, actually, from you, was incandescent row rage, which is hard to say now that I say it on the air. But we're going to talk a lot about row rage tonight and about the Supreme Court and how it's really been taken over by a bunch of activists and maybe a bunch of justices that shouldn't even be there. We'll talk about that plus a lot more. And here's Eric Garland. How are you, Eric? Hello, Eric. Is he frozen or is he just not talking?
Hello.
I think he was pranking us, Seth.
I think so.
Yeah.
That's what you got.
Look, here's the deal. I'm mostly going to just listen to Rachel tonight.
Oh, yeah.
No.
If we're
So what's
covering
that? That's the same.
I'm like, Bitcoin melted down. Okay, Rachel, go.
Do you talk a little bit about that? Do you want to talk first about the cryptocurrencies? It's worth talking about just a second before you.
I love talking about how everybody's invisible money disappeared.
Including the prime minister of
well, it's okay. The investors will be okay because they'll just go to the agency that regulates Tether, which actually has no headquarters, but it's rumored that it's based in Hong Kong, but no one can prove that. Oh, yeah. Right. We don't regulate that, so you don't get your money back. Oh, and it's not really security. So it's like you made a loan to these Bitcoin exchanges, these crypto exchanges. It's like you made them a loan and you're an unsecured debtor in the event of a bankruptcy. Got all this dorky stuff. It's like, why are these non-hipsters, these people who don't have even the good taste to live in San Francisco in a $6,000 studio apartment, like, why do all us DC dorks keep bringing up this big drag down FDIC, SEC, FTC, Treasury stuff? Because before all this existed, when people went completely, broke, like all at once, then everyone fucking starved.
Yeah.
And so we put the big buildings and we put all the nerds in the buildings. And so all these, but what if I had an Atari cartridge thing and I put in a bunch of Saudi and Chinese laundered money into it, and we just pass those around, and it would grow really quickly, and then we would all deny the effect of money laundering and hostile regimes, and just go, look, man, it's just innovation. And I would go, well, that would be stupid. And then when you all lose your money, there's no agency to go to, and I will laugh and laugh. And today, Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador, who converted the nation's currency to Bitcoin, I believe.
He did.
Converted.
What? Yeah. I didn't know that.
It was a few weeks.
Really?
I believe so. It was some months back. Because, it's hard to do their real GDP is entirely 1,000% in cocaine at this point.
Right. So it might as well.
Couldn't just you can't do baggies of cocaine. So they went to the next best thing. But now that's
cuts
off
out
his
the whole
bio
bureaucratic.
on Twitter.
Yeah, that's amazing. It cuts off the whole bureaucratic process. That's really smart of him to do that. So what did you say happened on Twitter?
About crypto to cocaine. That's a good idea.
Well, that's what it's used for, isn't it? Is that why people use Bitcoin?
Isn't it?
What did happen?
Fentanyl coin, Bitcoin coin, arms trafficking coin.
They should have just done that. Trump coin, Elon Musk coin, Tesla coin.
It's tethered to
Can we
prison
talk about
coin.
Elon? Can we
We
talk
can talk about Elon. We can talk about
his save me, I destroyed my first company. Help me, somebody get me out of this tweet.
I didn't see that today. I saw the one.
You guys didn't see that?
No, I saw the one where he just suspended his Twitter purchase today, which was like, okay, not surprised to see that. Yeah. We've been predicting that over here. But go ahead. Derek?
Well, so what he did was very subtle. He said they think there might be bots on this network that I didn't know about. Now, the Los Angeles Times had a story. I know. I mean, it'd be like Trump saying, "Well, I'm suspending my campaign while I investigate the role of bad hair pieces." Like,
I mean, Elon
you really?
Elon Musk must run
Um,
every single bot factory out there. I mean, he must have tons of them out there because every time he puts anything on Twitter, it just gets amplified by hundreds of thousands of people instantly, which must mean there's something amplifying him other than just humanity, I would think.
No,
I don't imagine that there's
he's got like Yang fanatics, there's like these fucked up crypto boy, libertarian dotards who are, convinced that
Chinese
this dude is
botnets.
Yes,
yeah,
thank
this
you.
guy's like the fucking god because he can land an X backwards, a rocket on an X,
Chinese botnets.
So do you think he was revealing that more than 5% there's more than 5% of Twitter users are Chinese botnets? Because he seemed to be in a backwards way admitting that 5% of Twitter was actually bots. And then that he might know where they come from is interesting as well because he's so tied in with the Chinese.
I'm going to defer to the analysis of DJ from Legal Eagle, which is a great channel on YouTube, explaining sort of like he goes through movies that involve attorneys and goes through and separates fact from fiction. And he's an attorney in Washington D.C. For real. And he said, "Oh, this is very clever. What Elon is doing here is avoiding the $1 billion penalty for pulling out of this deal." By suggesting that Twitter has not provided him with accurate information, that they've misrepresented material information about the risks involved in the company, and so he's raising that as a reason to not buy the thing because no one will give him the money because he is a swirling quagmire of failure and doom.
Is everyone getting the picture on Elon Musk? I mean, is everyone understanding now that he's just a giant con artist, that he's not anything special, that he's just basically a sideshow, a huckster? I don't know what you want to call him, but he is not the real deal. I mean, people might call him the richest man in the world, but it's certainly not his money. And clearly he's just conning America, and America's lapped it up for years. And no, he can't have Twitter. We're not allowing him to have Twitter. He cannot have it. I'm not going to have it.
Math is not allowing him to have Twitter. Like,
yeah, it's so funny because like he put this cry out for help the other 2 days ago. He's like, I might bring Donald Trump back, but only if I own Twitter. I mean, if I didn't buy it for some reason.
Oh, and he does that on the day that
he's trying to get what he wants is the public to keep demanding that he not go and there to be this outrage about Trump, so that he has an excuse that he could say Twitter canceled me.
You might be right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. He also that came the same day as the Tesla announcement, right? That he was recalling
Elon,
100.
Got your number, buddy.
Yeah,
I always have
do.
and always will.
Yeah. That same day. Sorry, go ahead, Eric.
Also, Tesla has a certain number of assets there that are in crypto, and if those melt down, then the value of his shares, none of that makes sense, and the SEC will dig into it, the FTC will dig into it, and it's just a galactic clusterfuck.
I remember that was the time that Elon Musk decided he was going to be a genius and buy a whole bunch of Bitcoin, and went up in price in the months after that. But it doesn't look so genius right now because a lot of the money that the assets they have on their books are worth a lot less today than they were when he first bought them, and they are not guaranteed, as you point out, by anybody.
Hold on. Then Tesla better have accurately portrayed the risks to their shareholders, or the SEC will find them in violation of that, and they could get sued if there are significant losses. Tesla shareholders could sue them for breach of fiduciary responsibility. They could. So not only he's going to need to be the richest man because he's going to need that much in legal bills.
It'd be amazing watching him collapse. I mean, it's going to be.
If he backs out and does this shit with Twitter that he did today, where he's like, "Oh, it might have been overvalued." I mean, how can that not be him trying to undercut? Like he's literally taking this company, using this whole like fake buying and depreciating its value. Like, would that be legal?
I don't know, and they're also
If some
acting internally like he's owned the company. They're firing people based on his new direction. They fired 2 people yesterday. They can't
Oh,
be.
they did?
Yeah. They're starting to run the company very differently. They've frozen hiring at Twitter. They've changed the culture. Meanwhile, it's not going to go through, guys. Maybe you should not change everything based on a deal that's not going to happen.
Wow.
Are they quitting, or are they having to take time off to go to testify at grand juries?
Well, they'll be fired. Literally, the statement from one of them was, "No, I'm not leaving on my own decision." They are basically,
Okay, well,
I gotta go.
then that's
They sent me
fired.
out. Yeah, 2 of them, 2 of the senior guys there. So that's not a good look. I mean, that company can't be acting right now, I don't think, as they are already owned by Elon Musk, because the deal hasn't gone through. Isn't there like a whole process of separating church and state until the deal happens?
I mean, you
It-
would have thought. I
Amazing.
would be shocked that they would make changes
Mm.
without that.
Yeah, but I think that's really dangerous that they're doing that. Also dangerous for Twitter. So, all these things people are saying about accounts disappearing, followers disappearing. That's also, people have to be watching all that carefully. But should we talk about row rage?
Row
What is
rage.
that
And
sound?
by the way,
Oh,
like
it's the ad.
here's something interesting.
Mm.
It's not 1970s, it's now 2020, and like a big chunk of you dudes out there are what I call feminist allies, right? So like absolutely disagree that only women should be talking about this. They want to strip women's fundamental self-control over their own bodies. And if you think about it, like say you're one of these unlucky bitches who get pregnant and get something that's going to fucking kill you, the state is mandating death. Okay, that's a state mandate that you're going to die because they won't let this operation happen for a baby. Okay, so we're not fighting for equality like de jure equality right now. This is not 1970. What we need now is a mass movement, and it has to be across all racial coalitions, both genders, and all the other options out there now. And we need to be focused squarely on the top line message, which is fundamental liberty and self-determination, not reproductive services, which is a very siloed way. I mean, these things are important, don't get me wrong. It's important that women of color and poor people are going to be immediately impacted, though I want to be clear. I don't understand why people can't get on board with the reality of what's coming. These motherfuckers are making it illegal for you to take your daughter and sneak out of state, okay? And they're putting shit inside these laws that allow for criminal prosecution. And once Roe gets eviscerated, if this memo is how it does, and it totally eviscerates it like that, all of these legislatures are going to have bills ready to go, ready to file. There are going to be full bans, not 6-week heartbeat bans, full bans, day one, moment one. And they're going to also pick up Plan B. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you could find yourself in a situation where you're in Georgia. In some of these states like Ohio or Michigan, they don't have legislative control in Wisconsin to change the law. So these trigger laws are going to come are going to be really rigid. They're much more rigid than the GOP's contemporaneous bans. The original laws that they'll be reverting to ban all abortion and make it criminal, right? So we really need people to be focused on the big picture. They're coming for the right to privacy. First, they're going to eviscerate women's self-determination, and that's our economic determination too, mind you. A major component of the so-called right to contract party is this economic liberty argument, and they're totally stripping me of mine if they take away my reproductive control, right? And number two, they're coming for, if it's right to privacy, and they're arguing that since it doesn't say right to privacy in the Constitution, there's all of the rights for gay Americans, for trans, all of that stuff is founded on that porn, boys, porn.
What
okay?
porn? They can't take porn away. Jeez, now you got my interest. Sorry.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Because I think it'd be a little bit easier to enrage men about just rando men, not liberal men, about access to porn than it would be to get them to care about other people's rights in the abstract.
Well said. Well said. I think Good.
I think it's so much more dire than that, actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you don't have the right to your body, you don't have the right to anything. And just
That's
because
right.
I don't have a uterus at press time, that law, if we put up with that, that opens the door to every other thing, getting rid of habeas corpus. This is not going back to the 1950s. This is going back to pre-Magna Carta.
Mhm.
This is autocracy. Because you mentioned, Rachel, the laws which this are emanating here in Missouri, where they put this bill forth to make it illegal to have your fetus leave the state if you make a decision in another state that has other laws, and then you're liable still under Missouri law. So that means the state of Missouri is claiming that it owns its human beings. Just be like, I'm not from here. I was born in Vermont, and I lived in Paris. I lived in Washington, D.C. I came here. But were I a woman, now if I leave, because what? Because because I had a lease here in Missouri, or I had a mortgage here in Missouri for a while. If a woman buys a house here for a couple of years and then leaves the state, that the laws follow her. I thought the Second Amendment was the thing the GOP fucked up the worst, but apparently the 10th Amendment is what they're really going nuts on, because there's no federalism without this. Or
Right.
rather, if this happens,
point.
you're saying there's no that there's no separation between the states. It's like, why do we have different state governments then? If
Well, Eric,
when
I mean, it's funny that you should mention that, because here's the ultimate goal. I mean, let's just go hog wild here and explain this to people, because I had to learn this and I had no idea. And I did a lot of research actually before I got to this particular tidbit. When Weimar collapsed into the Third Reich, there was a federalist system there. The states had autonomy. They had their own governors. And what they did was, at that moment when they consolidated power and had control of the Reichstag, which is basically just fake rubber stamping like Putin's parliament now, they abolished federalism. They just said, you know what? Now everybody's under one national government, and the government's going to send ambassadors, basically like the colonial times, where they have governors that served in these German states, but they were all that state separation, that subset of the special circumstances were wiped out. And I know that is the Republican Party's ultimate goal. There's no fucking way they're going to just let blue states do their thing and control the economic engine of this country. It's not going to happen.
No. I think what you're both saying is so important, especially the idea that we're becoming, and if this is ever is passed, would make us subjects of the state. I mean, we're sort of going to this idea, that monarchies have, where you're a subject of that monarch. You are not an individual who has control over their own bodies. You're not an individual who can go and make these decisions about where you live, whom you love. All these kinds of things disappear. We're basically then have no rights to who we are. We're just there to perform functions for the state. And this is ridiculous for a party that claims to be the libertarian party. Of all things, they claim to be libertarian. Right. And what they really want to do is control everything about you. Especially, and we talk about abortion. We're also talking about, the government in your bedroom, which is the most frightening thing for America. That's never been part of who we are. And
the government in your bloodstream.
Yeah, yes. And your family tree and everything. So there's it's okay. It's okay. You need to do your thing. I'll put you off, Mike. Yeah, but you're right, Eric. It's absolutely right that there's a little bit of parenting going on there, but that's okay. It's important to have on the show. The reality of it is the idea of becoming subjects to the states is exactly what they ran away from when they started America. I mean, that's the existence of that's why America became America, was to overthrow the king. And so now we're going to be back.
I gotta kick you, Broheim. We got to kick you back another 600 years. Yeah. You're talking about the Magna Carta was like, our bodies don't habeas corpus. To say you can't just lock somebody up. The king doesn't have the right to somebody's body without some form of law. And that's some form of law. We're talking about witch burners here, people.
Yes.
He
I'm
cites
the director them. Alito cites as his moral fucking compass men that were involved in the fucking witch hunts, dude. This memo is so astounding. If you haven't read the 90-something pages of it,
I didn't get through the 90, but I read some of it. Yeah, it's kind of frightening. It's weird language as well. The way that he's phrasing things. It's so aggressive and so. It's almost like the last 50 years didn't happen. It's kind of bizarre.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
It is meant to. No, it's not just that it's almost like the last 50 years didn't happen. What it's attempting to do is legally wipe it away, like literally legally eviscerate 50 years of jurisprudence. And I would argue probably more, because what this court's ultimate goal is, I think, is to reverse Lochner, right? That's the big decision that pisses them
What's
off.
Lochner again? Sorry, I forget.
Lochner is when the right to contract, which was like the defining paradigm of our entire system for many years, was right of contract. This idea that employers and employees enter into a contract. Obviously, it's a one-sided contract, and that economic liberty is like the guiding, most important principle of human development. And they use that to squash unions and all of the labor reforms, like child welfare and stuff like that. So, like, we get this paradigm shift in the New Deal when the economy collapsed and everyone was starving to death, as we just talked about. That's when the court starts to say, you know what, there is power here for the individual, and there's more than economic concerns, right? And that's where you start to see the second, like that second era of the court, or third era. I think it was the third era of the court. First era is judicial review, right? Second era is the right of contract, and then the third era is individual liberty, and that really starts up in the 1940s.
And none of these forces that are driving this are actually American forces. I mean, they're not originally American forces. We're talking about the church. We're talking about the Catholic Church. We're talking about the Kochs, who are, made a lot of their money out of Russia, which we'll emphasize in just a little bit. There's these and the entire Leo campaign and where it gets its funding from. The Federalist Society, and how we got these three justices on the Supreme Court is ridiculous. These three people should not be standing there, and they should not be determining such important things about American life. On the other side of this break, we're going to go into great detail about Anthony Kennedy, the justice you don't see here, but who was asked to retire by Donald Trump, a campaign to ask that justice to retire so Justice Gorsuch could be placed in his place. We'll be right back, and then we'll cover that story. Hey everybody, it's Zev Shalev here. It's becoming more and more expensive to buy groceries, and if you, like me, are trying to get all the nutrients and vitamins you need while still balancing your budget, it's become nearly impossible to get all the nutrients you need from food alone, especially on a budget. That's why I did the 30-day Athletic Greens Challenge in April. The plan was simple: take the AG1 supplement throughout April and track any increases in energy levels, overall well-being, and vitality. And if my immune system felt boosted, I did it throughout April, and I have to say, I feel terrific every day taking it. I still take it every day after the 30-day challenge was over. And the biggest fear that people have about green drinks is the taste. And I have to tell you that even taking a daily, drinking this drink every day, the drink tastes great every time. It's refreshing and tastes a little bit like a tropical drink. AG1 is engineered to provide all the right nutrients at just the right time. Whether you want increased energy or improved muscle recovery, they've got it covered. And because they care about your wallets too, AG1 will only cost you around $3 a day. To make it easy for you, Athletic Greens is also going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/narrative. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/narrative. That's the way we spell narrative, NARATIV, to take ownership of your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. And remember to go visit that site if you want all those free goodies attached to your order. That's athleticgreens.com/narrative, NARATIV. Hey everybody, now we're back live.
Hey everybody.
Very serious voice there. I was obviously a newsy day. I feel much better today about the world.
It sounds good though, it sounds tasty and nutritious.
It really is great. I do take it every day, and it makes me feel really fantastic, especially if you're in a rush, you can't get a full meal or whatever, you just grab it. That's
all
awesome.
of us, right?
Yeah.
We all need that.
Yeah, tell me about it. So let's talk a little bit about who should we talk about first? Should we talk about Kennedy, or should we talk about Thomas? Because let's talk about Kennedy. This is the moment I want to refer to, because no one really paid that much attention to it, although it was certainly noteworthy. This is Trump. I don't know why Kennedy. I was there for the Kavanaugh's being sworn in. So he's being sworn in, and Kennedy says something, and then Trump says something to Kennedy. There's no sound here, but you see the shock on his face, and then they move away. So no one knows
he looks
what to
unhappy.
say. He looks really unhappy.
I've never seen that.
it's a really important piece of video because, the Trumps had a bit of a campaign to get Kennedy off the bench. It wasn't just that he decided to retire. He was pushed out of the bench by the Donald Trump family. And here's how we know that. So let me put this up on full screen so you guys can see it too. This comes from Vanity Fair. And it says, can someone take that from me? Because I haven't, my eyesight as usual. But if not, I'll just read it. Here we go. Trump systematically nominated 3 of Kennedy's former clerks for plum judicial posts, while he criticized other, more conservative members of the court. He lavished praise on Kennedy, despite the fact that the justice has been pilloried by the right for his votes on social issues. And he cultivated a relationship with Justice Kennedy's son, Justin, who worked closely with the Trump organization in his role as Deutsche Bank as the global head of real estate capital markets, according to the Times. The overtures continued outside the White House. Ivanka Trump reportedly took Kennedy to lunch shortly after the inauguration and brought her daughter, Arabella Kushner, to the Supreme Court to hear oral arguments as a special guest of Kennedy shortly after. Republican Senator Chuck Grassley, who served as chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, went on conservative commentator Hugh Hewitt's radio show last month to implore the court's aging judges, if you're thinking of quitting this year, do it yesterday. Now, this is not really surprising. I mean, we've all known that there was a desire by the Republican Party to change the court, but it does seem like Trump really overstepped his mark here. I mean, for a first family to be actively asking a justice to retire is unheard of.
Oh yeah,
they're not
and
supposed to have any contact at all. They're not supposed to talk to him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So isn't it wild that they were running a campaign to get him to retire so they could put Gorsuch up there? And because of their relationship with Justice Kennedy's son and Donald Trump through Deutsche Bank, they had real leverage over there. Here's another article. This is from The Guardian. This is the book that Dark Towers. It's a fantastic book about Deutsche Bank. And in it, they talk about how there was a coordinated White House charm offensive to persuade Anthony Kennedy, a swing vote on the Supreme Court, to retire and clear the way for Brett Kavanaugh, according to a forthcoming book. And then I'll get into some of the book says there. Sorry, I said Gorsuch earlier. I meant Kavanaugh. But you get the general idea. So this is a new administration comes into power, run by the Kochs, basically paid for by the Kochs, and they decide they're going to get Kennedy, who's a bit of a swing voter. I mean, he was unpredictable on the bench, to retire and replace him with Kavanaugh, who they thought was their man. Maybe not their man now, we're finding out, but certainly the way we heard Sheldon Whitehouse describe him last week, the way in which Kavanaugh became a Supreme Court justice is incredibly corrupt.
Think about Zev. I'm going to point out why they would do this, right? And it's because, I mean, if they can mock Kennedy out and replace him with any of their picks, then they have 5-4 locked in their minds on everything forever, right? And if you keep Kennedy, you probably have the conservative majority, but not necessarily. Kennedy can go rogue, right? So like the stakes to get him out, because Gorsuch took the vacancy that had already been sitting there, were so, to them, it was about having, I mean, fucking Trump's mind, it was about putting justices on there that would just rubber stamp whatever he wanted to do constitutionally.
Yeah, or the Leonard Leo Federalist Foundation, backed by the Kochs, this is a 50-year operation to try and win the court, and they have stacked it with people that are completely ideologically unaligned with America. Completely.
Yeah, and like for the rest of them, that was the motive, right? To get to this moment where they could eviscerate Roe and come after the right to privacy and eviscerate gay rights and other things, right? Birthright citizenship. That was the golden goose for all of them. But for Trump, and the reason you see the Trump family, little crime cartel, all band together on this mission, is it's legal buffer for them. Personally, not about ideology, about them personally. And they felt like they needed that 5th vote to keep them out of jail or whatever,
It's shocking. Eric, any thoughts on that? I can't tell if you're frozen half the time. You're just shocked.
We're having some technical issues here tonight too, but I mean, this is just, there's so much getting rolled back. I mean, when you look at the chronology, we got abortion. Women got the right to abortion, or rather women and doctors got the right to do what to do the medical procedures they thought were was appropriate with some privacy. 3 years before women were allowed to apply for their own lines of credit with banks.
What? I didn't know that. That's interesting. That's
Oh yeah,
interesting.
no, I used to tell my students this. I used to be like, I'd walk them through history, and basic like civil liberty history, actually, when I did those chapters, civil rights and liberties. And one of the things I wanted them to understand is that in 1964, married couples could not get birth control. Married couples, let alone unmarried, like people who just want to fuck, okay? Married people could not get birth control, and they had to sue, set up a whole case like Rosa Parks on the bus and sue. And that's that Griswold case that people have been talking about. Prior to that, as Eric just pointed out, women did not have the power to get their own lines of credit without a husband co-signing. It was like the late 70s, I thought, when they finally got that. Right, Eric?
I think you're right.
Right?
Yeah. I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when was Roe 73 and the banking was 76? I mean, it's insanely, So how long have they been planning this?
I was born in 77, dude.
They started soon after, if you believe Sheldon Whitehouse, it's right after the Roe versus Wade was passed, the 72, 73. They started planning it. And it was a few years of secret planning. And then they started, they basically started stacking the courts. I mean, and the whole process, the whole Federalist Society, the whole confirmation process became stacked.
I believe it was also, I think it was the 70s as well. There was the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. I think it's Article 7 that makes forced pregnancy a crime against humanity that is prosecutable at The Hague. The United States did not sign on to that statute. We're one of the few holdouts, I believe.
And you've had a whole generation grow up with Roe versus Wade. I mean, 50 years, it's the way American life has been known. We're talking about taking us back to our parents' existence. I mean, it's sort of like it's a whole other paradigm that we are not ready for and cannot really do.
And that's why it's
Zev, respectfully, I disagree. It is not just back to 1960.
Yeah, you're right.
It is back to... It's back to before the Magna Carta, where you had some recourse against a king. This was a few rich warlords were going to own all of our bodies, all of our labor, and
all of us, everything we do.
These people, the rich. Okay, you know what? I think this has been a century plus long temper tantrum against Teddy Roosevelt and FDR, who betrayed their class. Like if you go all the way back to 1850, you still got slavery. You start to have the labor movement in the post-Civil War era, and then by Teddy, who was rich enough he didn't have to care. In 1905, he's like, no, we're doing antitrust. We're getting Food and Drug Act to going to work shouldn't kill you. Getting milk, meat shouldn't kill you. And the robber barons called him a traitor to his class. And he's like, fuck you. I have Dutch New York money. I don't need any of you. And then his cousin Franklin, deepened it even further with the New Deal and with some rights, and established somewhere between there, you had income tax that came in. This is like, you had people, who fundamentally didn't like the idea of freedom, kind of were jealous of the European concept of nobility and monarchy, and wanted to take us back to that. And they, we keep moving forward with more rights because it's logical, and it's actually much more prosperous and makes money and is attractive, which is why America had all this soft power. And the very wealthy have had a few corruptible, folks in Washington and in state houses who have been lifting up their, the tax code and all that, allowed these people to amass, getting back to robber baron type, levels of income and wealth inequality here. And they're like, right, as we were saying back in 1870, before you got all mouthy, or in the South, back in 1860, when you guys got all mouthy, you work for us and we own your bodies, and we will fuck you. We will sell your children. You will die working for us, and shut up.
Yep. That's where we're at.
We're, now the three of us, we're like, but what if we didn't? What
if we don't? The fight what if we don't? I mean, this really is the exact fight between democracy and autocracy that we're having. And I don't think people understand that it's about our personal liberties as much as it needs to be framed around that, because it doesn't get discussed. that way.
And I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, this is all of us. It's not about women and abortion or contraceptives. It's about self, as Eric, and I think Eric's tapping into like what I think is why the messaging is more powerful at the macro focus too, is to this I mean, like a lot of conservatives or like moderate conservative people care very deeply. I mean, individual autonomy is like the fundamental fucking basis of natural rights, right?
Exactly.
Like, if you don't have control over your vessel, there is no natural right, right? You have to be able to do that. And like, that is the argument we should be having. Should women be sentenced to die because they are pregnant and in a state where the state's saying, no, you must die for this unborn baby? Like, I don't think so, dude. Like, I think that's terrifying. I think the idea that the state owns my body because I have a uterus, and people, like, my tongue-in-cheek tweet went viral about, you know, I should change my vagina into an AR-15 because then it will still have fundamental rights, right? Like that. I mean, but it's not wrong. Like, if I cannot control my own body, I am half the citizen that my two co-hosts are.
Yeah.
Period.
Well, we won't be either. I mean, the reality of it is we're not going to be citizens either, because I grew up in South Africa. I know exactly what that autocracy feels like and looks like on everybody's side. It's not comfortable for anybody, but it's not a place America needs to go to. It's not a place that a world can go to without America. I mean, the idea of there not being an America that does what America does, which is push the world into a more liberal mindset. We won't have that. We'll only have these dark forces that are pulling us back. We can't have that. We can't have that going on in the world.
No, we can't have the world's most, like, you know, deadly military power by far, eons stronger than anything else on earth, fall into the control of fascist ideologues, guys.
Who have complete access to all our data, and all our privacy and everything. They know everything about our lives anyhow. I mean, that's just a volatile.
And this is not like the 1920s and 30s where the resistance has a chance, guys. Like, if they take over a stable America that's not getting blitzed or bombed apart, the surveillance capabilities that the government has now would make it very fucking hard, folks, for us to do anything like the Polish underground or anything like that, because they could. I mean, I don't know what they can do, but we know we have some ideas, and it would be very difficult to go up against the government if they had the full control of it, like the Third Reich did.
Absolutely difficult.
Absolutely. And I want to throw this out there, and this is a shout out to all the Republican, people who believe in gun rights above all else. After this Roe thing goes down and there's no more right to bodily autonomy, do you think the elite that take over, do you think they're going to allow you to have guns? Because Vladimir Putin doesn't. Yeah, everyone got suckered. The Republicans who took money from, what is the guy's name? Alexander Torshin comes over with the Maria Butina and becomes a lifetime member of the NRA. And they're from a country where you're not allowed to have guns, because dictatorships, they do not allow small arms in the hands of people. They do not allow the protections of the Second Amendment. And after they're done telling us that none of us have the right to our bodies, because this is just because you don't have a uterus this week, guess what? That once they say, we want government so big it fits in your crotch, it fits in your bloodstream, we decide what chemicals that you can ingest here and there to have an effect on your own reproductive tract. They're just saying, look, we run everything, we'll kill you when we want, and and they're insane.
Yeah. And no free speech, no free organization, no free anything. All that stuff just gets thrown out the window.
No shit. When I talk to these guys, like the righties particularly, what I try to get them to understand is, okay, it's all shits and giggles when there's still opposition people to jail and murder and control, but they will run through that. Okay, we can see it in Italy, you can see it in Nazi Germany, you can see it in Japan. Once you run through opposition, guess what comes next, guys? You useful fucking idiots. Okay, and the last thing that they'll be happy to let you have your AKs as long as you're mowing down and owning the left and black people or Latinos with it. Okay, but once that's done, they will not be letting you hold fucking firearms. And if you think that they will, well, man, I don't know what to tell you.
Can you give me a brief minute here to talk a little bit more about Anthony Kennedy and describe exactly about his son and who he was? Because it's really important. A lot of this comes from Dark Towers, the book by David Enrich about the Deutsche Bank. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Deutsche Bank's sort of storied history as a bank that was started by the Prussian king, and also chief funders of this dude, Adolf Hitler in Germany, and the Iranian folks. Where's my Ayatollah picture? There's an Ayatollah picture I don't have, but you get the general idea that these are funders of, not the most democratic of countries or even movements. Also, this man, Jeffrey Epstein, was one of the people who who got financed a lot of his human trafficking through Deutsche Bank. And we know, of course, Donald Trump and Jared Kushner all had ties to Deutsche Bank. It's fact how they survived all these years. No one else would loan Donald Trump anything. According to the book, Deutsche had become the key force allowing Trump to bounce back from multiple bankruptcies, to purchase and develop marquee properties, to recast himself as a successful businessman, to become a viable candidate for president, only because of Deutsche Bank. It goes on to say that this is the other thing that they did. The head of Deutsche Bank landed up being a fan of the Russians, or the Russians were a fan of him. They landed up hiring him after he left there. But he also extended $1 billion credit to Vladimir Putin, which is how a lot of the money laundering that happened from Russia that led up to where we are today happened. It's because it went through Deutsche Bank. The good relationship extended to helping wealthy Russians launder money into the United States, a crucial service since few American banks were willing to accept the legal risks. Interesting to note that these two people, the former chancellor of Germany, Merkel, and Putin were friends for 20 years, and she remains still quite close to him. And Ackerman, who was the previous, chancellor, whose name I forget. What was his name? Gerhard Schroeder. He went to work for Putin as well. So there's a close relationship between the Russian autocratic movement and Deutsche Bank that leads us all the way to where we want to get to now, which is, by the way, it was $80 billion that was laundered through Deutsche Bank. But then comes along Justin Kennedy. Justin Kennedy was the managing director and global head of real estate capital markets. He was one of Mr. Trump's most trusted associates over a 12-year spell at Deutsche, according to the Financial Times. It goes on to say that Justin's father was Anthony Kennedy, who had joined the Supreme Court in 1988. That opened slots of doors for Justin. Skiing in Aspen, the young Kennedy would mingle with billionaires and wannabe billionaires, men like Donald Trump. Kennedy sometimes sat with Trump in his luxury box in the U.S. Open tennis tournament, or at Manhattan nightclubs, where Trump would park himself off at a table in the corner, facing outward, holding court like a mafia don. Kennedy made his reputation on Wall Street by being part of a team with the foresight to short mortgages in 2006. Perfect timing. In just the first half of 2007, the bet generated as much as $540 million in revenue for Deutsche Bank as subprime mortgages fell apart. And that is the really controversial thing about Justin Kennedy, the son of Anthony Kennedy, whom Trump landed up getting to retire before his time in order so he could replace him with Justice Kavanaugh. That seems to me like an awful lot of corruption over there. That does not seem like it should never happen. It should never happen. And there's no way to control this thing. There's no higher authority over the Supreme Court. So there's no way to say that this stuff can't happen. But it clearly is not. This guy was in business with Donald Trump, and he got his father to retire. And, this whole mess about the subprime mortgages, it's corruption. There's no other way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about that and you think about the context of like all the pardoning, all those pardon corruption I mean, each one in and of itself is as monumental as this scandal that you're describing, which is just one of like at least 100 things, right? The hotel in Scotland and I mean, he's been charging the Secret Service to travel with him to his own resorts, right? Like, not normally you don't pay when you stay with the president in his house, you don't pay him rent, okay? like if you're going to want to go to your hotel and resort and bring the Secret Service, the idea that you wouldn't comp them the rooms, so like taxpayers have there's so much it's so frustrating, and I always wonder like what it must look like to people who are like us in the UK or France or Italy or wherever, like
They have the
where they
same
must.
problems. They have the same issues in the UK. I mean, this is not something that's unique to
UK.
America. Yeah, but they do. There's a different. They have the Russian takeover there, basically, of their institutions, including their Supreme Court. It's a very scary global thing that's happening. But this is how they do it. They
Yeah,
use a lot of money, and they must have thought
yeah,
about this for a long time because they were funding Donald Trump at a time when no one else would fund him, which means they had a
yeah.
plan for him, and they had a plan with Justin Kennedy. And this is, how great is it that you employ the justice's son so you can corrupt him, corrupt the family, and then be able to move him along. I mean, that's very mobby Russian style,
Yeah.
autocracy, but that's exactly what we've been doing.
Well, that's exactly what we have here.
Yeah,
I mean, we have a Saddam Hussein, Uday and Qusay regime, dude.
yeah,
You
absolutely,
know? Yeah.
absolutely,
I mean, there's nothing American about the Donald Trump administration. Nothing at all.
nothing. And then then we move into Ginny. Did you guys see, or at least read Justice Thomas's comments about bullying? Did you read that? There's outrageous
No.
comments he made yesterday about bullying. You look angry, Eric. Are you okay? Sorry, no, you look. I can't tell if
No, I just want. I
Eric,
just
this
want.
is supposed to be
Tom,
happy
you
hour,
mentioned Clarence
motherfucker.
Thomas. I'm like, is he in prison yet?
Well, why
We're
isn't he
gonna
in
have to
prison?
start. We're gonna have to start getting Eric drunk before.
No, I think it was just depressing with what I just showed him. But yeah, talk about Clarence Thomas and why he's not in prison, and why is Ginny Thomas not in prison? I mean,
I
the
know.
audacity of these justices to be doing this, it's insane.
Yeah, I mean, our founding fathers really fucked all this up. Like, they did great. If I was teaching this, like, I used to teach this shit, like the separation of powers and the articles and the bill. I mean, the whole fucking thing, the Constitutional Convention, from Articles of Confederation on. I am well versed in this stuff. I mean, I'm certainly not an expert because my expertise is different, but I know a lot about the founding. And I'm telling you, they did not intend to design a system in which the president is inoculated from the law while he's in office and inoculated from law when he's out of office. Like, there's no goddamn way you're ever going to sell me on the fact that that was the goal. All right. And we really have revealed some severe weaknesses in our institutional design, things that we cannot fix without constitutional amendments, which we cannot have without 2/3 majority and ratification in the states. And I think like I'm not saying we're going to fail. I'm just saying we are very much like a car that ran really well while the speed limit was 55 and like there was only so much driving going on. But now that it's 80 and like the whole world is asphalt, like our structure, it needs a rehaul to meet the moment, and it needs to not rely on the assumption that these men in office will do the right thing. And I don't know if you guys were watching, I don't remember which show. I think it was Chris Hayes last night, but they showed the past Mitch McConnell had been in charge of an investigation for a corrupt senator on the Republican side, and I remember the guy's name. And it's 20 years ago or so, and there's footage of McConnell talking about how important it is for parties to be able to police their own membership, and how the unanimous vote from the committee to recommend rejection from the Senate. So it was totally bipartisan, and like that's how our institutions operated. It's so important for people to understand until about 2010, and we're 10 years now into this post system where those norms, the things that allowed it to function, were all based on norms. It was based on the assumption that you would do the right thing. And it's clearly now met its match, because when people are willing to not do the right thing, then it all falls apart pretty quickly. And right now we have a lawless, I mean, hopefully we'll end up with law enforcement for Trump and his cronies and the people in the Republican Party that tried to overthrow the fucking government. But like, we were really like, I mean, and you saw any of this shit happen in another country like Canada or France. And I understand the UK's got corruption issues, and that's all from westernization, by the way, us following the example of us in media and campaign stuff and whatever, right? And like radical deregulation and Reaganomics and Thatcher shit, right? Like that stuff like there's a little bit of equivalency, but Boris Johnson held a roof party during COVID and violated the COVID law, and he was roasted for it, right? I mean, didn't he pay some enormous
Yeah, I
exuberant
did.
fee, right?
Yeah, he did.
So like
It was good.
so I just
Big
really want
scandal.
to point out, like, there's no comparison right now. It's true other countries have had moments where they were as much of a shit show, but the American shit show is distinct, and it is incredibly dangerous.
Because it's the only democracy. It's the only real democracy on the planet. Every other democracy is beholden to some sort of monarchy or some sort of other higher power, as far as I can tell. Eric.
Well, I mean, symbolically, right?
Yeah. No, they say symbolically, but how much power do they really have? I mean, it's they still are the monarchs. They still get to control everything. If all hell breaks loose, they're in charge.
I mean, is the Queen of England really that powerful still? I didn't know.
It's up for debate. I think
she's a huge landowner, and her children are running around trafficking kids and trafficking arms and doing offshore money laundering and not getting away with it. So yeah, they're pretty powerful. I mean,
yeah, but they can't run.
It's hard to.
I mean, in terms of being able to take the levers of control of the country.
I think they can. I mean, not America, because America's a really independent country, but it's the only one that really is a democracy in its own. Everything else.
Well, then I would tell my UK audience this, okay? Yeah. These constitutional weaknesses, these things that are falling apart on us right now, should have been identifiable, certainly after Richard Nixon, and we failed to identify them. And if it's true that the King of England is restrained from seizing control and returning Britain to a monarchy because of his own desire, you might want to go and codify some safeguards in there.
The new king, when he's ascending, it will be he's a very different monarch. He's got very clear ideas about how he wants the world to be. He wants, he's all about sustainable economies, but in order to be sustainable, he believes in a lot of deconstruction of existing economies. He's a very he's not a non-interferer in government. There's a whole scandal in the UK about the number of letters he's been writing to ministers over the years demanding certain policies. He's sold, passports and other things to the Saudis, to the UAE. There's a lot of, King Charles is not Queen Elizabeth. This will be a very different tenure in the United Kingdom. People should actually think about codifying the protections they have there, because I don't think they'll last quite as long as they think they will.
Eric, cheer us up.
Say something, buddy. Say something.
I mean, we're talking about the end. This is centered around Roe, which I think is the barn door that lets autocracy out. It's hard to be too chipper there until this is all sewed up.
Yeah, but we can.
We got to know why this was. What was the push for this? Because all these wealthy people, like they don't pay for abortions for their mistresses and their daughters. Come on now.
Oh, they do.
That's not what it's about. No. It is about it's not about liberal versus conservative. It's about the end of the rule of law and us becoming serfs again.
Yeah.
That's why some of these guys got so chummy with various monarchies and the Russians and whatnot. Is shared values. And they have come. It's not done yet. I mean, I'm in Missouri. They just closed out the legislative session, and they want to spend most of the time talking about a handful of trans children in sports and school because they don't want to talk about money laundering, and they don't want to talk about shutting down, child abuse center, private schools, and child trafficking and the rest of it.
Or that their next senator is a corrupt sexual abuser who extorts women.
The next one. Yeah. What about that? I mean, there's and then the current ones are foreign agents. I mean, we're not done. We're not done yet. But there's a lot coming up. There's little things like, we just filled out a quorum in the FTC so we can take apart some big companies if we gotta. There's the Jan 6 stuff coming up. Fight's not over.
Oh, the fight's not over at all. I
know-
think, yeah.
Not at all. It's just getting started. And guys, here's the thing: like, if that fucking decision comes out, anything like this memo, okay, like it can be softer, but still like do this what this memo does to the right to privacy. It is going to be a tidal wave. And the moment that happens, the politics that have favored them for the last 50 years flips in an instant, okay? Because the life situation becomes women who are forced to die because they have an ectopic pregnancy, or they can't get abortion to get cancer treatment. And those people are going to make the news, and it is going to be a total shit show for them. So, you know, and I'll say one other thing. And I know Amy Coney Barrett's a big fan of the show, so she's definitely watching it. She should definitely watch that Handmaid's show, because one of the most important through lines of that show is that the woman that brought down the fall of women's self-autonomy over their own bodies ended up getting her own fucking finger chopped off in the end.
Oh, I've got so much on Amy Coney Barrett I want to talk to you about. But can I just cheer us up with a little bit of Hakeem Jeffries? You'll enjoy this. This is from Wednesday.
If Justice Thomas really wants to deal with bullying in America, or this problem of people supposedly unwilling to accept outcomes that they don't like, I've got some advice for Justice Thomas. Start in your own home. Have a conversation with Jeannie Thomas. She refused to accept the legitimacy of the 2020 presidential election. Why? Because she didn't like the outcome. And so instead, she tried to steal the election, overthrow the United States government, and install a tyrant. That's bullying. That's being unwilling to accept an outcome because you don't like the results, because the former twice impeached so-called president of the United States of America lost legitimately to Joe Biden. How did she respond? Instead, she said the Bidens should face a military tribunal in Guantanamo Bay on trumped-up charges of sedition. You've got to be kidding me. And lastly, let me ask this question of Brother Thomas. Why are you such a hater? Hate on civil rights, hate on women's rights, hate on reproductive rights, hate on voting rights, hate on marital rights, hate on equal protection under the law, hate on liberty and justice for all, hate on free and fair elections. Why are you such a hater? And you think you can get away with it, escape public scrutiny? Because you think that shamelessness is your superpower?
Mr. Chairman, a point of order.
Here's a news flash
Mr.
straight
Chairman,
from the House Judiciary Committee.
Point of order.
Truth crushed to the ground will rise again, and truth will be your kryptonite. If Justice Thomas really
I do love that line,
truth
truth will be your kryptonite.
bullying
Sorry, I
in
think it's
America,
like,
or this
here you
problem
are.
of people supposedly
I don't know what happened
He's
to.
doing it again.
Yeah, he was good. It's a good speech. He has a good
No,
speech.
I mean, here's like, you know what that is too, Zev, that he just did there? He did the old pivot and attack, right? And he just spent the entire time he was talking was focused on, you know, Ginny Thomas and Justice Thomas and the Republican Party and the crazy shit, and reminding people about how crazy it is because they wanted to get Mojo.
Yeah,
right? Like
it's
that's what we
insane.
need to do every time we talk. We need to talk about Republicans. We need to talk about the modern Republican Party is doing, and just what a shit show people are facing if they take power again.
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is a great rallying point, and I think America will rally. And as usual, I think we're going to survive this and win this. But it is a very terrifying position we're in, and I think people have to understand that, and we have to keep reminding people of how risky this position is. But I also, my whole point behind the show tonight is that this particular judge, this bench, this SCOTUS bench, is really corrupt. Like, it's really corrupt. They should not be there. These people should
By
not have
design.
they should be
They
disbanded.
stole the Supreme Court.
Yes,
like
they
that.
should not. They should not be standing. They should not be on the bench. They should be. The whole court should be disbanded. They should reconstitute it because it's just corrupt. It's just corrupt.
Yeah,
you
no,
can't
it's
do what they
bad.
did. You can't do what they did.
We've always had listen, the loss of the judicial filibuster, which McConnell nuked, okay? McConnell nuked the judicial filibuster so they could get Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Comey Barrett through.
Yeah.
Because they could not have received 60 votes. And, you know, for all the years prior to 2017, you needed, well, not all of them, but, you know, in the modern era, you needed 60 votes. And that meant you could get somebody who was a liberal, but they couldn't be very liberal.
Mhm.
And you could
Exactly.
get somebody who was a conservative, and they had to at least pretend Thomas is kind of the outlier. The more common outcome was a Day O'Connor, a Kennedy, right?
Mhm.
And now we're going to have nothing but ideologues. And I'll be honest with you, it's incredibly, incredibly bad. Like
Yeah.
what we were going to see in this court is bad.
Amy Coney Barrett was predicted to be a person who's going to get the position on the court by art and collusion. He is now in jail in the United States. He's because of a corruption scheme that he was involved in. He's Putin's best friend. And in these tweets that he used to whisper to Donald Trump what he should do before these things happened, in 2019, he said, it's time to remove Ruth Ginsburg from the judges of the Supreme Court. Ginsburg, the star of liberal jurisprudence, has been at the Supreme Court for 25 years. It's time for her to rest. That was his actual tweet on January 11, 2019, before she passed away. And then he knew that Amy Coney Barrett was going to be the nominee well before anybody else knew, well before Trump had announced that she was going to be the nominee to replace Ginsburg. I mean, these kind of things on their own we sort of let slide, but we have to go back and look at these things. There's a lot of corruption in this court. There's at least 3 justices that are there for questionable reasons. And, we should be asking those questions and at least have a review of it somehow this year. It's not right that these 3 people can change the course of humanity and America just because they've been installed there illegally by this giant movement.
To the victor go the spoils, Zev. And
I know.
We have we can sit there and cry all fucking day about how dirty they are and how they fucked us up, or we can do something about it. And I vote we do something about it.
100%. And that means organizing, get out there, vote, because it's going to be an important one. And that's the show this week. I'm not sure why Eric left, but I think it was just because it was 8 o'clock. I hope so. Rachel, it's great to see you, and it's great to have you back. Do you want to share anything about what you're doing, or share how people can contact you?
No, I will say somebody needs to send poor Eric a fruit basket or something. He seems a little down.
Yeah.
Maybe he needs a fuzzy teddy bear or something.
He takes these things so seriously. I mean, he takes this earnestly because they are important. But
if only he had a hammy.
No, where's Hammy? Where's Hammy?
Oh, he's right there.
Oh, hey, Hammy. Oh, you make me happy.
He wants his 5 o'clock hug. He's coming right now. We gotta go.
You gotta go. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks for being here. We'll see you again on Tuesday. Bye-bye.
Narrative is made possible by viewers like you. You too can support our independent journalism by going to www.patreon.com/narrative.